Just remember that, lad. There's a small bit of a needle there.
But come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Eden, and now they're really rolling. And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everyone, you're very welcome to the Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show in partnership with Allianz. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined by the former Mayo footballer and manager James Horan, by the former Cork footballer Paddy Kelly, and by Maurice Brosnan, the senior sports writer with the Irish Examiner. Paddy, game management. There's a couple of seconds left in an All-Ireland final. You have the ball in your hands. It's 2010. What are you thinking?
You're obviously referencing back to Mayo yesterday and their game management or lack of game management yesterday, I think, against Armagh, throwing away the 5-point lead. Yeah, I guess in that circumstance we were a point up, down, and just got it back to a point, and Fintan Gouldach got a kick out, and I picked up the free. It's one of those where, in hindsight, I've looked back and I probably should have gone for a switch to a cornerback coming out into space. There was pressure on everywhere. I ended up, Daniel Gouldach had kind of drifted out. I tried to put it over the top of him, and he caught it, and kind of ended up being the kind of last play. But yeah, look, it's all about possession. I think you have to work it short. I'm not sure if teams have developed, with short frees at that stage in terms of creating space and guaranteeing possession. But going to Mayo with it yesterday, they had plenty of possession that last 5 or 10 minutes. Whenever things went astray, they just coughed it up a lot. I was kind of thinking of the Guardiola mantra of the best form of defense is attack, where you carry the ball forward and you keep possession up top, as opposed to inviting pressure into your own 45 where they can squeeze the play. Mayo, just like yesterday, came down to individual errors, poor decision making on the ball, and up top they wasted a couple of opportunities when it was really about working the percentage score. It'll be a sickener, but going back to buzzwords and learnings and all that, I'm sure Kevin McStay will be saying, 2 draws from the opening 2 games, undefeated. That's not a bad start for Mayo. Yeah,
you're Killian O'Connor. You're crossing. You get the ball just turning into the Armagh half, just over a minute left. You've runners left and right. What would you do?
I think what he did, he gave me a wide to Owen McLaughlin was fine. I think Owen McLaughlin made just a rush ahead outside the boot at a very difficult angle. You'd work the ball around. You'd try, and if they didn't have the numbers back, you'd have a go and maybe try to take a man on one-on-one and earn a free. Again, it was just poor decision making by one individual. There's those kind of things that happened last week as well from Galway when they got possession from that free that dropped short, and when their lads just booted the ball out. It's those things that teams, players learn through experience, and I'm sure that'll be referenced this week. How do we close out a game? I don't think you try to invite them on. I don't think you try to hold possession. I think you push on and you get the ball up to the opposition half, and then you can drift the ball back and you can suck them out and then punch a hole. But realistically, you're looking to buy a free to slow the game down and to give it to Killian O'Connor or to Ryan O'Donoghue to get another point to get you further ahead. But yeah, it was down to some poor individual play. I thought they got turned over. Like even Aidan O'Shea got turned over twice in the last five or so minutes. The goalkeeper tried a risky hand pass that ended up being a score. So all these things, just panic creeps in. They still had plenty of possession, but look, it's only the league, and they still got a point out of it, a point up in Armagh in what looked like it's a cracking venue. That was a very decent game. Both sides come away from that very, very happy, I'd say.
James, when you saw Killian O'Connor with the ball, what would you advise him to have done?
Yeah, Paddy summed it up well there. It was an interesting one. It was funny. Killian sort of got the first phase of play. He's the guy you wanted someone else to be there for to give it to him, if you understand what I mean. So I suppose it was an unusual situation when Killian got it. Like he had almost too many options. It was funny. There was Owen McLaughlin outright. There was a sense of a goal chance. There was a Mayo player, I'm not sure who it was, that ran deep on the opposite flank. And for a moment, there was a cross-field pass on there. So yeah, I think actually what Killian would be one of the smartest players in the country, and I've no hesitation of saying that, the way he plays and how he crafts the game. So he gave the percentage ball to Owen, which was right. Owen was brought on. He's an incredible athlete who was to stretch it. So I think that phase of the play was right. Owen looking to stretch it. Owen Owen didn't see a direct pass, a simple percentage pass. I think Killian was trying to loop round outside him again. So the percentage play would have been similar to what Paddy's saying, pass it out to Killian, a couple more passes. And when you're in that time frame, players can sense when a ref is sort of going to blow or what's going to happen or nearly when's, or, you know, an experienced player, when's the right time to take the shot, because you know the ref will blow it on the restart or whatever. So what you're either trying to do is play it down, get it onto your experienced guys. And yesterday, that would have probably been a Killian or a Ryan or whoever, you know, who's good ball winner, smart with the ball, and can win a free if needed. So try and get it to them. They have an option, or you keep passing it to play it down, and if you need to take a shot or whatever. So it's along those lines. So they started that off right. Just Owen couldn't see the clear pass and thought, you know, that if you put the ball dead anyway, it would have been blown. But he shot it so quick, the ref sort of felt, give them another chance, and it went from there. But I think, again, I agree.
What would you say to him? What would you say to him after the game?
Say to him?
If you were in the Mayo dressing room after the game, what would you have said to Owen McLaughlin?
Let's learn from that. What options had you? What options would you like to have had? Did you have the support you needed? What would you execute differently? You know, what do you think is the right thing? What have you learned from it? That's the conversation. The idea going in and you know, and you can feel the sort of commentary after, what the hell did da. So but it's having that conversation and learning from it. 100%.
And when you were managing Mayo, did you practice out those kind of scenarios? Is that a thing that happens? Is this practiced out, or is it reliant on, to large extent, on principles and on the instinct of players?
You'd go through. You'd have scenario planning sessions where you'd go through. You know, what are the 5 or 6 scenarios that you typically can face in games? You know, up, being down, with possession, without possession, black card, man up, man down. You'd practice those and go through them and tailor a lot of sessions on that, and try and create the pressure that you'd have in games. Now, games are different and all that kind of stuff. And it was some atmosphere has been referenced up there yesterday, and all that kind of stuff. So if you it's like everything. If you look at it hard enough, and I've always said it, there's brilliant learnings in there. So I'm sure Kevin and the guys and the players will take a big learning from that.
In a sense, was the damage done already? The manner of what had happened. Not that obviously that was the door had been opened at that stage. Yeah,
100%. I think you sort of go back to the old root cause sort of analysis when you look at it, really. So, you know, 5 points up with how many couple of minutes to play, or almost reaching full time. Is there a sort of nearly a subconscious decision or a conscious decision just to withdraw a little bit? You know, like Mayo's press on Armag's kick out yesterday, I thought was the reason Mayo were in such a strong position. I thought they were excellent. I thought Ethan Rafferty was strong and Armagh were struggling on their kick out. So Mayo were really, really impressive on that. So that they withdrew from that and withdrew a little bit to shore up the defence, if you like, for the last couple of minutes. Let's hold it out. But I think it's an awful interesting one, because if you have a mindset, right, they were Mayo, I thought Mayo for 35, 40 minutes yesterday were brilliant. I really did. I thought they were strong, they're running, their decision making, courageous. I thought everything was good. So when they're 5 up and you try and see it out, if you overdo that, you withdraw. So immediately you hand over momentum to an opposition. And momentum is crazy. And how many games have we seen it in where you give a team in any sport, you give a team momentum, very quickly things can go awry, and then, you know, panic stations, etc., etc. So it's about, to me, the key learning from yesterday is, when you're in that position, or teams are in a position like that, how can we still be a threat while maybe securing the back a little bit more, if you understand what I mean about it. So it's not having everything back so that you're no threat whatsoever, so you're completely inviting them on. So it's about still being able to punch when you do get the ball or want to counter-attack.
It looked to me that in the FBD League and against Galway, Mayo had worked on a new defensive structure at the end of a game, and you saw it after McLaughlin's miss, where everybody pulled back, and it was almost like let's meet them at their 70, and we'll try and be compact here. And so they got caught between wanting to be compact, but then in wanting to be compact, they went away from what had put them in the position to be 5 ahead in the first place. Yeah,
no, exactly. Somewhere in between is the might be the optimum, you know. But I think the positive thing is that they're looking at those things, they're working on those things. You know, you can see change in the shape and the format. But a lot of the character and characteristics of the team were evident yesterday. So they'll learn a huge amount from yesterday. They will, and move forward with it.
What did you think of it, Maurice?
I thought it was really interesting. I think it's something I've been thinking about a lot this week because I was at the Galway game last week, as Paddy mentioned, when Carl Sweeney cleared that ball to Ryan O'Donoghue, and then I was at UL played University of Galway in a Cynicism Cup, a repeat of last year's final, the quarter-final during the week on Wednesday night there. And that game actually went to extra time, and UL were a point up. Very similar situation to what Galway found themselves in the night before. And Galway were attacking. There was 2 minutes left in extra time, and it was kind of a similar situation. Ball broke on the 20-minute line, and Paul Walsh from Kerry got the ball, very similar to Carl Sweeney. And I don't know, lads, if any of you know Dangan, he just boot through it, was aiming for the river in Dangan there, boot through it out over the sideline. It was like, and if anybody knows Dangan, there's no way anybody's scoring from a sideline there on a February night there either. So it was very evident, put this ball out, get back, reset. And sure enough, they held out to win that game. And I think, like, the way I think about this, probably there's 2 options. If you park the ethical concerns here for a second, like there's a tactical strategy, and then there's kind of a, what you would call maybe a strategic strategy, which is, some teams would look at being cynical. So I think, like Paddy, you mentioned 2010, I can remember that vividly. I actually think that attack broke down and you went up and forced a turnover again. It felt like, to me, it was, we'd play this game in your half of the field for the close of that. The alternative is actually what 2007 Kerry, I have a vivid memory sitting in Croke Park, Kerry are playing Dublin, and Colin Coop gets the ball and literally solos to the corner flag. Like literally, this was like soccer. We're going to wind this clock down. We're going to hold possession here. We're a point up, very similar scenario. And then on the flip side, then you've the alternative. I'm sorry to do this to you now, James, but like I'm kind of curious why in 2017 what Dublin did to you with a point up and pulling everybody down. Like why? I'm conscious, right? I'm the only one here who hasn't been in congestion. So pardon me for this. It might be a simplistic question. Why wouldn't you press that kick out, and if you lose it, to resort to what Dublin did, like pull someone down, take it. The game is up here. It felt like to me what on this podcast last year, it was discussed a lot what Armagh did against Galway in the quarterfinal. I don't know if you remember that. Before Killian McDade's equaliser, Kieran Donaghy explicitly called them all back. It was we're a point up, concede this kick out, everybody back inside your own half, and we'll defend from here. I thought it looked like to me Mayo did the exact same thing. Interestingly enough, yesterday it was everybody back inside your own half here. It felt like, given the style refereeing the whole game, he was only going to wait for. It felt to me that the go-to option there is press this kick out. If we lose it, park the moral dilemma there for a second. If we lose it, pull down here. Like, why wouldn't they resort to what Dublin did in 2017, for example?
Yeah, I suppose, like, you have a couple of, as I said earlier, scenarios planned, right? And you know what you'll do if this, that, and the other. And you talk about that before games and you're practicing your last training session. You know, you'd go through that, and that team now are developing. That's sort of what I was intimating earlier on. I thought the strongest part, one of the strongest parts of Mayo's game yesterday was that they're pressing the kick out. You know, there was a lot of shots from TV from behind the goal for every kick out. So you got a really good picture of how Mayo were setting up. They were putting at least 3 inside, and they had 3 on the half-forward line, and they were reading Ethan Rafferty's kickouts really well. They were going early, so they were influencing Rafferty's kicks hugely. So they got great go out of that, you know. So I would that's what I would have gone with, and then depending on how the break goes, you know, to alluding to what you're saying, depending on how the break goes, you set up from there. You know, and that can, if you win the break, you can play it out. If you lose the break, you know, what's the right thing to do based on where the game is at. So you can then get your number sorted. So it's a fine line, and it's we're a team and a group. Whatever that team and group feel is right and are practicing and are comfortable with, that's what you do, you know.
Maurice, you referenced that Dublin team, and we pay tribute here in the past to Dublin's extraordinary athleticism and their brilliant skill level, but they were also capable of a right bit of cynicism. And do you want to talk about that Dublin-Galway league match in particular? Because it wasn't just in an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, so I think, Paul, the thing, one of the things that Dublin team were best at was game management. Was in multiple scenarios. If you recall, the 2019, they're trying to create one last opportunity in the draw All-Ireland final, and John Small literally stands in the middle of the field and holds his hand up in the air. Like it was very clear that the signal for we're all on the same page here. Where they actually ended up manufacturing a chance for Dean Rock's free, which he missed near the sideline. But I just remember vividly the March after that. The 2017 All-Ireland final, they were down in Pearse Stadium in Galway, and a similar scenario point up, and the game just became lawless. Like there's players being pulled on. There was actually a guy on Galway Bay going ballistic on commentary that day. Park Joyce, I don't know whatever happened to him since, but he was going absolutely nuts. Like about
he might have taken over the Galway team, Maurice. I'm not sure.
He was going mental. Like, you know, spelling out. They're pulling down Damien Comey here. They're very clear. I think he took particular issue with Philly McMahon. Really took issue with the way they and. To a certain extent, I understand why. Like, I definitely, if you're on the receiving end, I understand why it's frustrating. But it would have been really interesting to me last year, Paul. It would have been amazing. Nobody talks about this because of the drama. Understandably, the drama and the skill of Sean O'Shea's free. But it would have been really interesting if the referee gave Dublin one more play there, purely because it would have been really interesting to see what were Kerry about to do. They were point up. Sean O'Shea is turning he's roaring something at Joe O'Connor. They're a point up. The kick out gets off. I don't know if you remember, that kick out goes off, and David Clifford puts in a tackle, which was very similar to the tackle in the junior All-Ireland final this year. Like, this was, you know, red, yellow, black. I don't care. You're going nowhere. Like, and it would have been. To what extent was that his instinct, and to what extent was that their go-to plan? It would have been really interesting to see, had we seen how that would go. And I'm sure at some stage this year we will see how they will manage a similar scenario. But I definitely do think, like, you have the option if you have the ball, and now you're going to try and control possession, and then you also have a choice without the ball. And it was fun, interesting that Mayo decided to concede the kick out, not try and go after it. And if the chances are he's going to play, you're playing away. The chances are a referee might give a team an opportunity to level it up and play for the draw. So, whereas if you're going to foul, why not foul in their half and then continue to foul back the field as much as possible? But I appreciate that's a simplistic breakdown of it. But I do think that's a lot of teams. I think that's what Dublin would have done. The great Dublin team would have done in a similar scenario.
Paddy, were you ever coached the foul?
Yeah, you would certainly have been encouraged, especially as a forward, to the half foul and just the cheap foul. Yeah, 100% you would have been encouraged to slow the thing down.
And did you do it?
You would have been. Do you know what? It never came naturally to me. I'm not claiming to be whiter than white, but just at all levels, club level, intercounty level, you'd have been told to slow it down. You'd been told to foul up. To allow fellas to face the ball, so you're not caught in the counter-attack. I think every single intercounty team is at that. There's no question about it. Some are better than others. It's one of those where you look at, not to bring in rule changes, but if that kind of thing develops and there's obvious cynicism in terms of slowing counterattacks, there has to be severe punishment, because that just spoils the run of the game. And as the lads have mentioned, if someone wants to go like the Dubs did, or and just shut things down completely, it makes a mockery of the thing, because it just results in headlocks and handbags. But no, I would be shocked if every county team has not been told, forwards have not been told to foul more.
Maurice,
Jim,
what happened in the All-Ireland final? What happened in the All-Ireland final last year with Kerry and Galway in this respect?
Well, that's a familiar failing for Galway. The exact same thing happened yesterday. Like in Pearse Stadium, there's not a huge amount to talk about that game. It was a very poor game, but there's a really similar scenario there. And Paul Rouse openly said it afterwards, and when we spoke to him, that closing out games is now a problem for this team. It's on them that that game was 16-all when John Daly's fouled. They rattled off the next 4 points. Part of that is connected to the conversation we had last week, actually, Paul, in terms of not having enough reserves so Galway just naturally have a poor final quarter. I do think there's something else beyond that. It's kind of a mental approach to how they close out games and how much panicking they are in possession at that stage. Like, James, to what extent would you have praised Owen McLaughlin for that tackle in the kind of final against Galway for taking? Like, I presume he got a pat in the back for what he did there.
This is the one where
it's just a mistimed tackle.
Yeah.
Morris, I don't know what you're alluding to at all. Yeah, we don't. do we want to bring that up? Look, that was that game up in Salt Hill. We were hanging on. Galway were coming strong at us. Galway were going through, just about to pull the trigger, and Owen got contact on. I can certainly tell you more.
Hold on now, James. He got contact on.
I was asking a question there, but there's no Owen Morris in the Mayo dressing room that was given out to Owen. I can tell you that. You know, look, it's cynicism in where do you go with cynicism in every sport, everywhere across the world? You know, from players rolling in the first minute of a game when they're tackling, like those. You could. How many incidents across the weekend were, and maybe this is something that's creeping into Gaelic, where players sort of, there was minor contact and yet players are going down and rolling. There was a couple of incidents in the Mayo Armagh game yesterday. You know, or was there contact? Was there really contact there? You know, so what is cynicism? Where does it start and where does it begin? And it's through every sport. You can call it cynicism, you can call it gamesmanship, you can call it whatever it is. But you can call it players making decisions based on where things are at. Now there is like everything, there's a scale in that. You know, the scale that we talk about when Dubs were pulling down Mayo was had to be pre-planned, preordained, ready to go. If we're in this scenario, this is exactly what we do. And when you're at that level, that's a real travesty to the game. But you're never going to eradicate some level of sportsmanship. You could, it starts at sportsmanship, maybe ends at cynicism, if you understand my point. So it's in the game. It'll always be in the game. But where there's a systematic approach to it, something needs to happen. There needs to be rule changes.
And in the All-Ireland final last year, I think I'd be with Paddy on this one, that there's a lot of people down through the years who praise Kerry footballers for their style and their panache. And really across history, it shows it clearly there is no county more ruthless than Kerry footballers when it comes to winning matches. And Maurice, you looked at the turnovers from last year's All-Ireland final. What happened in that?
Yeah, like I think that's exactly what James is getting at there. Like, and you talk about scale, and to what extent is this planned, and to what extent is it controlled? I was at a GA coaching conference. I won't bring up the coach here now, but I was at a coaching conference in Croke Park a couple of years ago, and there was a hurling coach giving a presentation. It was actually on, I think it was on the heart of a team, or the kind of team spirit, and he was going through his slides anyway, and accidentally he put up a slide, and the headline on the side was tactical fouling. It was from it was supposed to be, and everybody in the room kind of laughed, but it was a knowing laugh, because everybody in the room knew that this has to happen. Every single team talks about this. It's part of the game. If clubs or counties are talking about this, and this is what you're getting at with Kerry cynicism. If you go back to 2021 and Kerry lost to Tyrone, like the most common, how scores come from in Gaelic football now, like if you talk about this in a very simplistic level, the majority of scores are coming from turnovers. So that's, I'm attacking, I give the ball to you. We're exposed, there's open lanes, we're vulnerable in that moment, and they go up the other end of the field and score. So I think about 38% of scores last year came on a turnover. And that's what killed Kerry against Tyrone in 2021. Like, Kerry scored 2-9 on turnovers. We're going forward with the ball, we lose it. We're now vulnerable, they're coming back on top of us like a counter-attack. And that absolutely killed Kerry. So 2-9 against Tyrone. And it's interesting if you look at, all the talk about this new defensive structure and what Kerry did differently. But what actually did they do differently in 2022? So firstly, I think they had 35 turnovers against Tyrone. They had only 11 against Galway in the All-Ireland final last year. Like, that's straight away, you're onto a runner there. I think 2 of those were on a kick out. One was, I don't know if you remember, David Moran kicked the ball over the sideline just before half time. David Clifford let it be known that he wasn't going to tolerate that. 2 were dropped into Conor Gleeson. So if you're left with 5, and after all 5 of those, so these are the turnovers you don't want. Like, you're in the attacking third, you go back to how did Kerry's 2 goals come from against Monaghan last year? Monaghan are attacking, turned over in the attacking third. First one is Jack Barry tackles. No, sorry, that's the second one. The first one is Thomas Sullivan wins the ball, kick pass to Michael Burns, the big sweeping counter attack. There's nothing they can do. Goal. Second goal, the exact same thing. Jack Barry tackles Gary Mohan. Ball comes to Adrian Spillane, kick pass forward, goal. Coming on a turnover. After those 5 turnovers in Kerry conceded against Galway, they immediately fouled. Like immediately, you go watch those back. Watch what Stephen O'Brien is doing. Watch what Brian O'Buckley is doing. It's not a black card. I'm pulling you down here, or I'm tripping your ankles. It's 2 hands in here. It's I'm holding you up and slowing you down. You know, it might not even be a tick in, but that's tactical foul. And that's what a lot of teams are doing. I think if you watch back Kilmacud this year, this has been an element for as long as Gaelic football has existed. The best teams have kind of pushed the rules or broke them if needs be. But Kerry were absolutely resorted to that last year. Kilmacud resorted to that last year. I think that's what Paddy was getting at earlier in relation to if it becomes an increasing problem. I do think maybe in certain times the onus might be on a referee to keep track of. I know it's a really hard thing to do, but if players are up towards 5-6 fouls, that's not happening by accident. But like this is, I'm sure like this is not. I don't think this is earth shattering or anything like that. I think a lot of teams are doing it, but as often is the case, the best teams happen to be the best at it.
Paddy, what a difference a week makes. Cork footballers, I mean, probably on Kerry's coattails for Munster title now after the weekend. They go to Fortress Newbridge.
Yeah, it was some to be fair, and some scoring 2-14, and to keep Kildare to 7 points. I was there last week against Meath, and like after 50 minutes, Cork were slightly the better team. It was two very even teams. Like looking at Division 2 before, and I just said Dublin, Derry, and I would have thought Kildare were kind of battling out for 2 for 3 there. I'd have felt Cork, Meath, and Clare were in the middle, and I thought Limerick and Louth would struggle. You know, they might clip one of the middle crew, but Kildare are looking like they could be in trouble now because they're going away to Clare next before hosting Derry, so they're in serious bother. But Cork, savage win. So like taking last week a very positive 50 minutes, and then got caught with a turnover and a goal, and then kind of collapsed and conceded 2-6 last week against Meath. Like Cork's style is the one thing I'd have been a bit critical of last week. I thought it was one dimensional. It's very much a running game. There is very little looking up to kick and to move the ball through the lines quickly. As Maurice referenced there, the Kerry goals yesterday, it was very obvious it was the counter-attack kick that kind of beat the retreating defence. Like Cork stuck with 13 of the 15 that started last week. I got a text off a fellow who was at the game saying after 10 minutes saying football is dead. The game is 0-0. But I think that's what Cork had to do. They had to go up and just shut up shop for early on. Make sure they stayed in the game, because we played Newbridge a lot, and Jesus, it's a desperate, tough place to play. It's very tight. In hindsight, look at it, maybe it suited Cork's style of play. The Cork play a running game, and the thing is tight. I think an open game, Cork's running game is too attritional, whereas I think in Newbridge maybe might have suited. And once they got the couple of scores early, Brian Hurley got a couple of scores. The goal, Sean Powder's goal, look at it last time in Sunday game, the defending was atrocious. You were looking at it. Powder gave the ball to Hurley, and there must have been 7 or 8 Kildare lads with only the 2 Cork lads to mind, and how they left Powder go at the back post was criminal. But from a Cork point of view, huge win. We've Dublin next, or in 2 weeks' time at home. I'd have been saying if we got 1 win out of those first 3 games, I'd have been fairly happy. I didn't think it would come this way. I thought we might beat Meath last week and struggle against Kildare, but Cork are kind of in a tough place now. The Tailteann Cup is kind of is looming large if you're in relegation trouble, or if you're in 6th place. So we really need to be pushing for the top half. I think Cork are good enough to be just behind the Dubs, Derry, and that bracket. Like last year when Cork lost to Dublin.
Are Cork not a Tailteann Cup team though? Is that Cork, Westmeath, Cavan? Would that be Cork's level?
Yeah, look, maybe Cork arrogance would say no. I think we're a bit ahead of those teams. Like this time last year, we lost to Dublin. A fairly okay performance. First half was very decent. Got blitzed a bit in the second half. Kerry, similarly, we stayed with it for about 50-55 minutes in Championship. But we played very defensively against both teams. The only other 2 games we got in Championship were Louth and Limerick at home. And, I felt that we were just a level above them. No, we didn't. It wasn't easy, but I don't think we got to look at Cork against a team at their level or slightly above their level.
Yeah.
Meath or Roscommon, someone of that ilk of Monaghan. So I'm kind of interested to see where Cork will go if we can just maintain Division 2 status, get into the Sam Maguire, and then you're looking at, you could have a provincial winner like Dublin and a loser like runner-up like, let's say, Mayo or Roscommon, and another lower Division 1 or Division 2 team. That would be very interesting to see how Cork would cope. I think we have the potential. Colin Manny came on again yesterday at half-time, and Conor Corbett is kind of tied up a bit up in Dublin in college, so he's not getting much time. I think we have the forwards coming through. We have a massive problem with the amount of scores we concede yesterday. And again, we're trying to wait to see what Kevin Walsh's influence is. Last week, it wasn't very apparent. I know from everyone up in Mayo and Galway, they'd say defensively, that's what he prides himself on. The last week, the only thing I could see was the kickouts that Galway kick out, that they flood one side of the pitch, and they did that again yesterday. Cork won, I think it was 8 out of 10 they won last week, just launching to the left, a body of about 6 players and focusing on the breaks. I think in time that'll be, a better team will hoover that up and kind of you'll be breaking even. But I think Cork it's a settled enough team. Like this time when Cork lost Dublin last year, you would have predicted 12 or 13 of that team that are playing at the moment. So that's a good sign for Cork. The turnover isn't as drastic as in the last 5 or 6 years. It's not. The script hasn't been torn up. We have the best players inside the squad at the moment. There's no one outside of that squad who I think should be in there. So
do you think Cork are better than Clare?
If Cork playing Clare in Championship away in the quarter-final, and if we win that, we play Limerick away, I'm sure, in the semi-final. Like, for Cork to win both those games in Championship will be a big ask. Limerick came down here last year and put it up to Cork. I thought we were better, but there's no evidence to say we're better than Clare. We haven't beaten them regularly in the league. Clare have maintained their Division 2 status. I don't know, is it 6, 7, 8 years now?
Yeah.
Cork are playing Clare. Cork play Dublin at home and then Limerick at home, and then travel to Clare for the league 5th league game. That's an absolutely massive game. I'd imagine Cork would be on 4 points, 2 wins at that stage. A win away to Clare, and I can see Cork almost sneaking the 10 points, possibly to be in a show of promotion. Now that's going and beating Louth away and beating Derry at home, but like not to flip flop or yo-yo too much from being very down last week. But I just thought last week was such an opportunity against a team of your standard at home. I just thought it would be a huge boost to win that. I think just if you keep winning the games you should win. Losing to Dublin at home in 2 weeks' time is not going to be a travesty. So I would back Cork to beat Clare, but at the same time that's an even game. I put Cork, Meath and Clare. I would put them on an even keel. But look, I'd be happy we have the forward line. I just think our style is a bit too one-dimensional. It's all running, and I'd have been to a lot of the Cork Kerry minor and 20 games in the last, let's say, 5-6 years with TG Carr, and it's a very obvious thing from Cork football. Like we've beaten Kerry and something we've been the better team often, but it's a very much a running style. Whereas you see Kerry, even when they're losing to us at minor and 20s, it's always kicking out from the fence, down the channels, that 20-30 yard pass. And I thought it was very apparent yesterday against Monaghan. Kerry's style, it's like, they're without, I don't think anyone who started yesterday for Kerry from midfield up started the All-Ireland final or semi-final. I could be wrong on that, maybe one, but they still had the exact same style. So for Cork, it's fine when your running game works, and they apparently were very defensive and sat back, and Kildare pushed up massively from what I'm told, and Cork hit them on the break. It's just, I think you need more to your game than that. And look, that will come hopefully. Kevin Walsh, if he,
Is he there? Is Kevin, do you hear much coming out of the camp? Have you been talking? Is Kevin down much? Is he there every night? What does it look like? What,
I'm understanding he's done a good bit, but again, I'm sure we'll reference the Sigerson issue. I'm not sure how often they have had a full squad. This time last week, Cork had 14 lads playing Sigerson. So I mean, you have lads playing midweek, weekend. They're not going to be training. I can't imagine the UCC or MTU Cork lads were training midweek. So how much work and how much progression is being done, bar tactical clipboards and stuff, I'm not so sure. I do think it'll be a month or so before you see any real patterns developing as to what Kevin Walsh is implementing, because my understanding he's been given free rein to kind of implement his style.
Yeah, and it must take time. But James, Division 2 looks like a serious dogfight, and I think Paddy made a really good case as to why Cork could sneak in, despite everything, could sneak in to that second position. But if you look at Meath, I wouldn't have thought Meath were going to be promoted before the league, but they've 2 wins in two matches that you could easily have seen Meath. Last year, Meath would have been on no points from those two matches. Derry and Dublin are probably the favourites for it, but you can make a case for four, possibly five teams.
Oh, it's a fascinating one, you know, and every weekend it'll change, but you'd have to fancy Dublin, Derry, you know, at the outset after two games, but the teams following suit is really interesting. Like Meath, such a bounce they've gotten over the two games, but even before we go through that, like I have to feel for Glenn Ryan today. You know, if you're the Kildare manager, you know, after a strong performance against Dublin in the first game, you know, and you know, some of their forwards look dangerous. Cosgrove and Highland were you know, a lot of stuff going well, and then you know, I think Paddy referenced it there, going to Newbridge or wherever to play a game. It's a hard place to go. Be a big crowd there, all that kind of stuff, and to put in a performance like that is, you know, it's one of those moments you go, Jesus, where do I go from here, or what's going on? For that level of inconsistency, your first home game in the league over a week, that's hard to deal with or hard to analyze. You know, why was that? So there'll be a lot of head scratching in Kildare today, I'm sure.
And to go to Clare next week, and Clare they stayed at it with me despite conceding 4 goals, 3 goals.
If ever there was a gut check, we said it last week. If ever there was a gut check of a team, it's Clare.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not bringing your attitude isn't right playing Clare, you'll be beaten.
And didn't have Owen Cleary yesterday.
Yeah.
Didn't have Darren O'Neill. Like, so two of their key players gone, and they're still competitive.
Yeah, you'd fancy Clare in that. You know, as I said again last week, we play them so often, Clare in challenges, and their set up and their structure, and Colin Collins, what he's doing, they're a phenomenal bunch. They're a phenomenal team, a unit. So anything you get off those guys is hard. So that's going to be interesting where Glenn goes from here, because, you know, positive, and next thing it's gone up in a puff of smoke, really, over the course of the week. So much to there. But yeah, how it's going to fare out is going to be fascinating.
Well, if you were in that position that Glenn Ryan is in, I agree with Paddy. Before it, you would have thought it was Kildare, Derry, or Dublin to be promoted. That's what I would have thought was 2 out of 3 of those. Now you're 2 league games in, positive against Dublin, although didn't win, and then yesterday, like a fairly serious 13-point beating at home to Cork in a match you're really expected to win is really serious. What would you do in training on Tuesday night?
See, it's a funny one. I had, I'm not name dropping here, but I had dinner with Alex Ferguson at an event one night, right? And you know, when you're sitting beside Alex Ferguson, Jesus, what the frig do you talk to Alex Ferguson about? Yeah. But I was just asking him about games, and
don't talk to him about horses. That's the only advice.
That's what he said at halftime, the Champions League. All this kind of, you know, I just happened to get a lucky seat. But I was taken with what he said about games after defeats or players played bad or whatever it is. He said, you know, before the end of the game, he's already moved on, because they have a game in a couple of days. So if you're down on players or down on the performance and down on everything else, before you know, you're into a game. So the mood and everything going into the next game won't be what it should be. So he addresses it and moves on very, very quickly.
Okay.
And, you know, if you think of Kildare, right? So if Glenn Ryan starts again, this would be my approach. I'm not saying it's the right one, but if you go bashing the players, you know, their confidence will be, for whatever reason, their confidence will be low. You know, you're going into training the next time, and there's probably a hard training session coming, or there's loads of negativity around it, and there's loads of players cranky and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, then if the manager and the management team come in and it's all negative and it's all whatever, you can go into a tailspin very quickly, which is that of any benefit to you when you're trying to prepare for the next game? So it's a sort of a logical analysis. Here's what we said we do. Here's what we did. Why was that? You know, and quickly move it forward. So if it becomes, you know, the doomsday scenario, it's no good to anyone, particularly the Kildare team. So it's about analysing it and moving on quickly and getting, how can we get the max training session next Tuesday night? What mood do the players need? You know, what mood do the players need to be in, etc.
Is that what you would want, Paddy? Is that how you'd want it to happen, or does there sometimes have to be a fairly frank exchange about things?
No, I'd be very much kind of analytical with things. I guess like yesterday, Cork lads would probably be getting that video last night before they meet up, whether they get their, you know, individual clips or the whole thing. They would have studied their own stuff back. I'm sure management would have clipped the positives and negatives, whether it be focus on kickouts or turnovers. That's a huge thing as well with Cork, that Maurice referenced it, that the lack of turnovers. Cork kept turnovers to a minimum. No, I think most players are I think those video sessions are great. Like, I think you really have to be brutally honest in how you analyze things. Fellas have to be, you know, whether it be structurally your defensive zone or attacking with the ball, and you know, if you've got your mantras of, you know, keeping things wide and depth and all that. I think it's very important for fellas for those things to be pointed out, because I mean, the last thing you want is those errors to repeat. There's no need to flip the lid off, see if there's things like work rate and lack of effort. You know, that's a serious concern. But if it's just kind of tactical stuff, you know, again, I think they can develop that. But again, away to Clare and then home to Derry. Kildare could be looking at 0 from 4. You know, that's going down the track a bit.
Yeah,
but it just shows the beauty of teams playing at around the same level. There's no certainties, and yeah, look, from a Cork point of view, it's all of a sudden we're looking up now, and things are a bit more optimistic.
Cork or Kildare could be 0 from 4, and Louth look like they're really improving. They're very competitive in this division so far, and that will be another good check, as James puts it there, for Kildare. This could get really sloppy very quickly, Maurice.
It could, yeah. The only thing I would say is that I think the further down the divisions you go, Paul, for all the excitement we have about players coming back for Dublin or for Galway or whoever, the further down divisions you go, you feel absences or players coming back much more. These players can make or break your season. Just for example, I think the best I saw Louth play under Mickey Hart was the league final last year against Limerick. Their best player that day was Kieran Byrne. I thought he was phenomenal. I think he kicked 4 points left and right foot. He's now gone for, like, you'll be absolutely devastated for him. He's gone with an ACL injury, his second time doing it. He just turned down a chance to go back to Australia.
Yeah, tremendous football. Very sad to see him out.
Yeah, so and I think that really what hamstring, particularly when you look at what he offered alongside, the fact that you could play him alongside Samuel Roy and lighten the load, so to speak, on especially if maybe they're the only two who are going to play in that inside forward line. I think that's crucial. And that's true. The further down, you just mentioned Limerick there briefly. Their best forward last year was Josh Ryan. I thought he was brilliant. Another player who's gone for the year. I think that's a massive loss, potentially an irreplaceable loss. We only saw clips on the highlights last night, but Darren McFeely back to Cavan. That's
it's huge.
Can genuinely make a season like that. Can you know? I was thinking about Fermanagh last year. Shea Cullen got man of the match last week. He was away. He kept me giving these scores some play. Can you imagine if Shea Cullen was around for Fermanagh against Tyrone in the first round of the Ulster Championship last year? Like, is he worth? And you could stick him inside and McCurry. Is he worth like 2 or 3 points? I'd say so. He is. Fermanagh beating the All Ireland champions in the first round of Ulster makes their season. Like, that's, I think, for those teams, having players around. And it's true. The further down you go, it's even more true. Wexford had a 24-year-old captain last year. He's gone abroad. Like, the further down you go, players being missing has massive losses, and particularly with injuries. I'm sure I'm leaving out somebody. Tipperary, Conor Sweeney, again, like that is just such a crude blow, particularly with the nature of the calendar now. I was thinking about this yesterday, watching Damien Comer be stretchered off for Galway. Like, immediately he's under the cost, regardless even if it's not worst case scenario. And you know, fingers crossed we get some good news this week. But even if it's not, you're under the cost because of, like, Robert Finley's missing 6 weeks. That's 6 weeks without training. You're at the start of the championship and you're trying to come up to speed in a year that could be over very, very quickly in April and May. So because of the nature of the calendar, those sort of injuries are massive. And then, as I think the further down you go, players coming back or particularly missing, it can be detrimental to your entire season.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. You're right. It affects disproportionately counties that are really dependent, who don't have big squads, who are really under pressure to deliver. James, I want to go back one step here, and it's to do with the reaction to a defeat in the league, a significant one, on players being cranky or a couple of defeats in a row. Would you ever leave the players just to sort it out themselves?
There's different approaches you take. You know, like it's depending on where things are at, how it is, how you see it, and some of the guys mentioned there. There's various levels of defeat, if that makes sense. You know, if there's if you lose a game and you're doing your stuff, your effort and application and attitude was very, very strong, and you got pipped by a team that played better on the day. You know, that's one. At the opposite end is I think what Paddy said. If the effort, attitude, work rate just wasn't there, they're two very different. Again, that scale of defeat, if you like. So you react very differently to those scenarios. Every team, and you know, you particularly hear it with rugby, and you know, with the Six Nations at the weekend. You know, the leadership group. It's probably not as formal in Gaelic, you know, but every team has a heartbeat. Every team has you know, a range of players that are very experienced, very clever players, know the pulse, and they have a group that can set a tone very, very well. And you know, some that can be young players or old players in a group. Yeah, and a lot of discussion can happen straight after a game, particularly in league, because there's such quick turnaround. You know, you might, you know, if you're playing on a Sunday and you're away, you mightn't train till the Wednesday of that week because you want the guys back in there to recover or whatever. You know, so you might only get them together once before you play the following Saturday or whatever it is. So sometimes you have to use that hour after everyone's showered or whatever in the dressing room, and a lot of times that some of those experienced players can certainly drive a lot of what's needed there and then. And then, as if you know, as a manager, you can row in with that or add to that or maybe challenge that even based on what's been said. So would there ever have been a combination?
Sorry for cutting across you. Would there ever have been a time when Killian O'Connor, for example, or Colin Boyle or Lee Keegan would have come to you and said, "Look, we'll sort this out"?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And you'd try and create the situation where players would take a lot of responsibility, or would take ownership of a lot of those situations. No, it's a double-edged sword. You know, it can be a double-edged sword because, you know, a lot of managers, and I've had to work through this. You know, if you give players too much, Jesus, they're designing tactics, or they want to do this, or they want to do that, or they want to do the other, and then you're over here as a management team and you're worried about where they're going and oh my god and all this kind of stuff, and then in between that there can be confusion. So when you get your group together, you know, that leadership group, let's call it that, you need to be.
Who was your leadership group in Mayo? You had Killian O'Connor, and who else? I presume Killian O'Connor, given his intelligence and his achievements, I presume he was one of them anyway.
I think it changes, but there's a heartbeat. Obviously, Killian with his experience, you'd be talking about Aidan O'Shea, you'd be talking about the captains. So you'd you know, the captains when I was there was Stephen Cohn, and the two vices were Paddy Durkin and Tommy Conroy. So Tommy, you know, and then you'd have probably Ryan O'Donoghue on that, because Ryan would be a very good reader of the game. Tommy would lead by action and deed. So that, and they're hugely respected by the rest of the group. But there some dependent. Sometimes you'd have a vote. The team would vote in their leadership group. Sometimes it naturally forms. You know, so again, each group is different, or each team is different. So as a management team, you're trying to address that. But you want your players to step up and move things forward for sure.
Paddy, when you were playing, were you one for standing up and talking in the dressing room? Or for going and sorting things out if they needed?
I probably would have been more like if I would have felt it was an issue in the half forward, kind of talking to the half forwards, you know, individually or whatever. Yeah, James, it's a tricky one, I'd say, for a manager, like, because you know, whatever, leadership or you allow the players to ownership that you allow the players to take, it's very important the manager still has that, that authority and that the players know that the manager is the boss, and that they show that regularly. I think that's really important, that whatever leeway or bit of rope they give the players, that the manager is always strong enough and shows that they're in charge. And like most managers nowadays would bounce tactical stuff off players, but that doesn't mean they'll take, they'll swap their own opinion. So yeah, I think the modern game, it's so different now to like when I started playing, let's say, club 20 years ago, even playing county going back 10 years ago. Things are so different now. It's way like it was, the dictator, the manager was just instructions, you do what you're told. Now it's very, very much a collaborative thing, and even the way sessions go, you've different people doing different jobs. I even saw the Cork minors there the last couple of years, watching 1 or 2 of their sessions, and the backs be here working with defensive coach and forwards be up there and keepers here, and it's just so much more. The attention to detail is so much better, and it's so much more tailored towards the players. It's even drills wise, like going back to let's say 2010, it was all drills. It was just about getting the speed of drills up to speed. Can you do things at a massive intensity, a massive speed? Whereas nowadays it's all game based stuff, and that change has only happened in the last decade. So it's I would say trainings are far more enjoyable, and I'd imagine the environment is far more enjoyable. The season condensing, I think, I can imagine, is a huge plus for the county players. That I know teams are training since probably September, October, but from January now to whenever it finishes, there's a nice balance of matches and trainings.
Paddy, they weren't allowed training in September and October, so I'd be certain that no county team went back before the allotted date. There'd be no tradition of that ever happening in Gaelic football at any point. To turn quickly before we finish to Division 4, Leitrim and Laois look like they're pushed ahead, or will push ahead in this. Maurice referenced Wexford being down Martin O'Connor, and it's kind of stunning really to look at Wexford, where there are a lot of good footballers, and yet they look stuck. Leitrim, James, how do you view Leitrim?
Yeah, great start. Obviously, Andy in there doing well. Had a good win yesterday over London. So they're exactly where they'd want to be. And their year is set up now. Even the championship draw in Connacht looks very good for a Division 14 to get to provincial final. So. There's a huge carrot there for Leitrim, and Andy will be driving them on. But there's when you look at it, Sligo are not going to go away either. They're knocking around there, obviously being the first game, but they're there on 2 points, and so there's still a lot of competition there. London are no walkover either. But as regards Leitrim and Laois, I suppose Laois certainly you'd expect them. Andy will be very happy with how the season started, and it's all to play for him there.
Maurice, what should we look for over the next couple of weeks? There's a free weekend next weekend, and then the league comes back with some fairly incredible games really in 2 weeks' time. Kerry away at Mayo. I think Monaghan Donegal in Division 1. Whoever loses that is in an awful lot of trouble in Division 1. In the second division, obviously it's Cork Dublin. I think Derry Meath is now a very big game. Clare Kildare is a huge game in that one. And of course, the big game of the weekend, I think there'll be 10,000 people in Mullingar to watch Westmeath and Offaly. I think there'll be a huge crowd at that game. It's whoever wins that has got a great chance of being in the hunt with Down and Cavan in promotion. And then in Division 4, Carlow, Laois, Wexford, Leitrim. Like, there's a lot of games. What are you looking for in the next couple of weeks?
One of the nicer things out of this is to see the buzz that is building. Like, I don't know if you saw the crowd that were following me yesterday. I was in Pearse Stadium. There were 7,000 there. I'd say half of them must have been from Roscommon. The fact that they've are 2 wins from 2 and are now welcoming Armagh in 2 weeks' time, I think that be very like the hype could sell out for that game.
Club Rossi on tour and now comes home.
Another massive game that you didn't mention there in 2 weeks' time. I think Galway and Tyrone is suddenly an absolutely huge game in Tuam because Galway are under the cost share. This is the first time I think they've kind of a proper chance to get everybody together, kind of 10 days of good, solid work. But they lose that game and they're staring relegation in the face. Like that's a serious onus on them. Just to go back to a team we touched on last week, and James kind of spelled this out really well. I do think that these 2 weeks are defined by, Sigerson, you're scrambling around, you don't have players available, you're kind of coming back together. It could be anything and anything. You would see a lot more shape. You would hope to see evidence of whoever it may be, Kevin Walsh in Cork, if you believe it or not, Jim McGuinness maybe in Down, this kind of thing. You would start to hope to see a bit more fingerprints on teams by round 3, round 4 than what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. So you can probably put a bit more stock in those games, and there's certainly a lot more significance in them for the likes of Galway or Louth or teams who are kind of starting to look over their shoulders now.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you very much. James, I want to finish with one question. If you were looking across the fence to Galway, Tyrone, who do you hope wins that match?
I think Morris is right on Galway. Shane Walsh, I'm not sure he'll be back for that game. He won't be back for that game. Damien Comer, Robert Finnerty, they're 3 brilliant players, I think it's fair to say. So, Galway had such a good year last year. And then facing, if that game doesn't go well, if Tyrone win that game, I'd say, the pressure's on in Galway. And I'm sure Mayo will be playing Galway again at some stage this year. So does that? I don't know if that answers your question.
So you're basically telling me you hope Tyrone win because you want keep Galway down for the spring at least.
What else would I say? What else would I say?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you to Larry Ryan for running this podcast, to Raf Rocca, to Jack Neville, to Tony Lean, and to everyone at Examiner Sport. Thanks to Allianz for their support. A huge thanks to James Horan, to Paddy Kelly, to Maurice Brosnan for joining us today. Béimiid Charnash Galua.
Remember that, lad. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to